Hey, what's up, hikers? I'm Bigfoot. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 different things that I will do differently the next time I thru-hike the Muir Trail. To kick things off, let's talk about transportation to the Muir Trail. So I went southbound on the JMT. I started in Happy Isles all the way to Lone Pine. So I was southbound and I decided to get my flight into Reno, Nevada. And what I soon realized was it was really tough to get from Reno down to Yosemite Valley. I got in on a Saturday and the buses that ran, now I was late in the season, mind you, but the buses that ran from Reno down to my connecting shuttle, which would have been at Lee Vining or Mammoth Lakes, only ran Monday through Friday, and then the other shuttles that ran into Yosemite Valley was only running on the weekends that late in the season. So it was difficult, and I was able to luckily find someone to give me a hitch down there. But what I would do differently is whether I was going northbound or southbound, I would have spent the extra money and I would have just flown right into Mammoth Lakes. There's a few different options of where you can fly into, and the cheapest from what I've seen is going to be Reno. And it could be as much as half the price what it would cost you to fly into places like Mammoth Lakes or Fresno. Now, the nice thing about Fresno or Mammoth Lakes is you can get a direct shuttle into Yosemite Valley from that. So what you will make up in cost, you kind of make up a little bit in convenience and a little bit in cost as well, because you're not going to have to take an extra shuttle that you have to pay for, and of course that's time and everything else. But having said that, again, I would fly right into Mammoth Lakes. It would be a little more expensive, but the nice thing about going into Mammoth Lakes, I can get a shuttle right from Mammoth Lakes all the way into Yosemite Valley. That shuttle runs sometime in the middle of May all the way through September 24th. And when I wrapped up with my thru hike at Lone Pine, I could take the other shuttle that goes from Lone Pine all the way back up to Mammoth Lakes. Now you can take that shuttle all the way back up to Reno as well, but it's just really convenient. But Mammoth Lakes, from what I've seen, talking to some folks and actually doing the trail now, seems to be the best option. Not the cheapest, but the most convenient if cost really isn't a big deal for you. The next thing I would do differently is I would make sure I arranged my transportation such that I would get into Yosemite Valley before the Wilderness Permit Center would close. Now, the place where you have to pick up your permits at Yosemite Valley is open from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 p.m. Now, on their website, it says 9 to 5, but when I was there, it was 8 to 5. Now, I got there at about 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m., which on the day before my thru hike started just meant that I had to pick up my permit the following morning. Now, the crummy thing about that was after you pick up your permit and you get back to your campground, you pack everything up, by the time you get to the trailhead, you might not be starting until like 10 o'clock in the morning, which is right around the time that I started. So I would have made sure I got into Yosemite Valley, pick up my permit the day before. You can stay at the Backpackers campsite, which is fantastic. It's only $6, which, by the way, make sure that you bring exact cash. They don't accept credit card or anything like that, so I had to go and break a bill. But stay at the Backpackers campsite. You can stay there the night before your thru hike starts, or you can stay there the day that your thru hike ends if you hike into Yosemite heading northbound. So make sure you get to that Wilderness Permit Center the day before so that you have enough time to get your permit and you can start as early as you would like going out of Yosemite. Now, the third and fourth things that I do differently really pertains to my gear. I actually thought my gear was very dialed in. I was really happy and very comfortable with my setup on the trail, except for one item that I would have changed differently. And instead of bringing my Neo X-Lite short pad, I would have spent the extra weight and brought my longer pad. Now, I did quite a few hikes this summer with my short pad, and the nice thing about this thing is, it's torso length, but it only weighs 7 ounces. 7 ounces is pretty fantastic if you ask me, compared to the 12 ounces of the regular pad. So why would I change going from a short to a regular? Well, and this is really just my own personal opinion, but sleeping on a torso pad when the temperatures got below 30 degrees wasn't really that comfortable for me. I really wish I would have had my regular pad out there when it did get cold. Now, I started on September 10th and I finished on the 22nd of September, and there was a couple different nights that got below 30. One night in particular that was probably somewhere around 15 degrees. So would have been more comfortable and I would have sacrificed the extra weight. Now, outside of that, temperatures staying above 30, especially above 40, summertime or even early fall, then I definitely would have gone with and continue to go with the short pad. Again, it's just about comfort for me. Now, the other thing that I would do differently with my gear is just take care of it better by keeping a closer eye on it on the trail. And I really kind of took that for granted. When I hiked up to Half Dome, I had my gear, just really my pack with just the essential items that I needed, basically kind of like day hike items. But I set my pack down for maybe 3 minutes and left it unattended. And by the time I got back, I had a chipmunk that was chewing into my hip belt just to get some peanuts that I had in there. So, you know, you hear lots of different stories of folks having marmots and other animals, chipmunks, things like that, getting into and chewing their gear. Take it seriously. You know, I really didn't think about it on top of Half Dome, but you'd be surprised. Now, what's recommended is anything that you keep your food inside. Now, this would be outside of keeping it in your bear canister when it's actually sealed. But if your bear canister is open, or if you have food in your pack like I had in my hip belt, that you don't want to keep that more than an arm's length of distance away from you. Again, learn from my experience, but that's definitely something I would have done differently. Now, the next thing that I do differently is actually how I stored my used toilet paper. You have to pack out your toilet paper while you're on the John Muir Trail. There is a portion of the trail at the very end or the very beginning, depending on which direction you're going, the Whitney portal, that you actually have to pack out all of your waste, which you're given a wag bag for. But outside of that, you do have to pack out all of your toilet paper. Now, what I learned on the trail, and I thought was actually quite ingenious, is to put all of your wasted toilet paper in a Ziploc bag, which I did do. However, what I didn't do, and I learned this, was put a couple of bounce sheets or downy sheets inside. One on each side of your Ziploc bag. It's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to make it smell a little bit more pleasant. Number two, you're not going to be able to see through the Ziploc bag and see what is inside of there because nobody, including yourself, probably wants to see that. The sixth thing that I would change is the transportation that I took to get to Vermillion Valley Resort, or VVR as most people know it as. VVR is a popular destination for PCT and JMT thru hikers. VVR is a great little resort, offers a lot of things that you really want at the time. When you hit there, they have beds that you can take, a little hostel. They have really great food. The portions were large. It was a little more on the expensive side, but they also offer free camping at VVR. And they have an incredible hiker box, at least when I was there. But there are a couple different options that you can take to get to VVR. Now, the most popular option is to take the water ferry. So VVR is on Lake Edison, which is a man-made lake, and it's on the opposite side of the lake from where you're going to hit it. So you get off on the JMT and you take this side trail 1.3 miles to get to the landing where the ferry picks you up. They pick you up at 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock. Now, the ferry costs like $13, and you get a little bit of a discount if you do a round trip. But what I wish I would have done is I wish I would have taken the ferry. Now, when I got to the junction where the ferry landing was, it was just before 2 o'clock p.m., so I had like 2 hours to wait, and I just decided I'm going to continue hiking. There's a trail that connects all the way to VVR. And this trail, first of all, wasn't really easy. During the course of the following 6 or 5.5 miles, probably ascended about 1,000 feet, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you just got done climbing a huge pass and going down a pass, you're really not expecting to do a lot of climbing when you're walking around a lake, but that was the case here. So a little bit of ascending, and it was a little longer than I thought it was. Total mileage was just over 7 miles from the junction of the JMT, according to my GPS watch. So it was quite a hike to get all the way to VVR, and quite frankly, I rolled into VVR at about 10 minutes to 4. I wish I would have just chilled, relaxed, maybe swam. There was a great little beach down there that I would have done instead of actually taking the trail all the way around to get to VVR. The next couple things that I would do differently is really about locations that I wish I would have spent time at during my JMT thru hike. The first location was MTR, or Muir Trail Ranch. Now, when I went through that area, MTR was closed. They closed somewhere in the middle of September. You can pick up your resupplies all the way until about September 27th. I think that was a date in 2017, but it's right around the end of September. But everything else closes down. You can't get a place to stay there, but there is hot springs there. And a group that I was hiking with for about 4 or 5 days on the JMT went to the hot springs, and I have heard a lot of great things about that area and the time that they spent down there at the hot springs. So I wish I would have actually taken it up and gone to the hot springs at MTR. And if MTR was open, I definitely would have wanted to stop down there. So if you are hiking during the period of time when MTR is open, I strongly suggest going down there. Even spending some time over at the hot springs. And I'm pretty sure that you're probably not going to be disappointed from what I've heard from the other hikers. Now, a couple other destinations that I really regret not being able to spend more time at and really being able to work out my mileage to stay at. First was either Thousand Island Lake or Garnett Lake. Now, they're right next to each other within a few miles, and they were just beautiful, breathtaking. Wish I would have spent time and actually stayed at one of those two lakes. Most of the folks that I spoke to that were heading northbound, a lot of them said that one of those two lakes was their favorite area of the John Muir Trail. Now, speaking of favorite areas, my favorite area of the entire JMT was Ray Lakes. Ray Lakes is just on the northern side of Glen Pass, and it is remarkable. I couldn't believe how beautiful that it was. And I got there really early in the morning. It didn't work out my mileage, and I wish I would have just pushed the night before and got up there and stayed on Ray Lakes. But Ray Lakes, Thousand Island, and Garnett, in my opinion, were some of the most beautiful scenery that they had on the John Muir Trail that I wish I would have taken the opportunity and stayed at. And next time, I will. Now, the last two things that I do differently is in the form of food. If I did this whole thing over again, and I was hiking southbound, I would have brought less food between the start and VVR, which was about 90 miles on the trail. Now, during those first 88, 90 miles between Yosemite Valley and VVR, there's a couple places that you can A, get food at, and also B, they have a camp store that you can buy anything that you really need for on-the-go snacks, things like that. That's Tuolumne Meadows, Red's Meadow, and then of course, again, you have Vermillion Valley Resort. And what happened with me is when I rolled into Tuolumne Meadows, I ate a humongous lunch, so much that I really wasn't even hungry for dinner that night at the grill. And they have mostly everything that you need at that camp store. Now, they do have resupplies, so if you want to mail a resupply there, there's a post office there, but you could do that and save a little bit of weight. And then, of course, you get to Red's Meadow, which is somewhere around 55, 56, something like that miles in on the hike. And they have a camp store as well there. And they have a little diner that serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And knowing me, yeah, I went in there. I not only had dinner, but I also had to have breakfast. So I did that between those three places of VVR, Red's Meadow, and Tuolumne. I had 5 different meals. So I basically had an extra 2 days worth of food that I really didn't need. So I would have brought a little less food, saved a little weight on my back. Now, the last thing that I would do differently is I would have brought hot chocolate. And this is, of course, if I went during the same period of time with the temperatures that I saw, but Hot chocolate was a huge morale booster. I didn't have it until I saw other hikers drinking it, and I was just jonesing for hot chocolate. So I did pick up some packets at VVR when I resupplied, but I definitely wish I would have had some hot chocolate on the trail. Would have just made my morale go whoop up, and I love hot chocolate. What can I say? Well, those are the things that I would do differently next time, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a next time that I thru-hike the John Muir Trail. For those of you that have done the JMT, what would you do different in hindsight? Or if you haven't hiked the JMT, maybe it's another long distance trail, what's something that you would have changed? Would love to hear from you guys. Thanks so much. Again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so. Coming out with a lot of great content here the next few months to help you plan for your upcoming thru-hike. Any other questions, leave that below. Stay tuned for many more sightings. And remember to always follow Bigfoot.